kingdom of God is near. So, what else is near is summer. Summer is near, okay? Now you say, what? No, summer's not near. It's here. Well, yes, according to the equinox, but not necessarily according to Israel, okay? Now, yes, it's true. Summer is here, like here in the West, we would say it's the first day of summer, so to speak, or yesterday. But it's interesting that this ties in with what we talked about last time, the fig tree generation. And he says, learn the lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender, its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. So it's kind of an interesting, I think about the fact that the Israel nation is the fig tree nation. And their leaves have come out. They've sprouted now, they've grown, they've matured. And then he's saying something here that summer is near. Like, in other words, the important thing wasn't so much the fig tree. That was just to let you know that summer is near. Like, why is summer being near is such a big deal? Is that important, Jesus? Should we know when summer is near? Kind of makes you wonder, why is he pointing this out? He says, even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. So he's kind of making a parallel with summer. So it could be that this is paralleling with summer that we're in right now. And that summer being near, the fact that Tammuz 1 is coming upon us. And it's interesting. I'm going to show you something here. So a year ago, a man got swallowed by a whale. Okay? It's true. It really happened. This guy got swallowed by a whale on June 11th. Okay? June 11th of last year, this man was swallowed by a whale like Jonah. Okay? And Jesus said no sign is going to be given other than the sign of Jonah. And Jonah was three days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, so the Son of Man was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth. So just a year ago, on June 11th, this man was swallowed by a whale. Well, what's interesting is June 11th just happens to be, if you go back to 2021, oh, that's why I had the 21 calendar open. I'm like, why do I have the 2021 open? That's why. Okay, so in 2021, right? This guy got swallowed by a whale on what we call June 11th. But actually, if you look at the calendar here, it was the 1st of Tammuz. The 1st of Tammuz. That was the day that he was swallowed by a whale. So, and the whale spit him out, by the way, just like Jonah. He didn't die in the whale. You can actually see his picture there if you scroll down. He's in the hospital bed, giving his thumbs up that he survived, just like Jonah. Okay? So, but what's interesting here is on the 1st of Tammuz. Now, that's the first day of summer in Israel. Okay? With Israel, they really only have 2 seasons. They've got summer and they've got winter. And so even though we think of the summer solstice as the time, they look at it more on a month-to-month basis, right? Just like they look at spring as the month of Aviv, right? When Passover happens, well, they look at summer as the month of Tammuz, right? And that comes this year. If we go to this year now, we're basically looking at that happening around July. Let's see, I think it's July 1st, is it? Actually, it's June 30th. Okay, June 30th. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Okay, stick with me here because there's some interesting things I'm going to tie in with this. Okay, so if we go back, now the day before this man got swallowed by a whale, on the 11th, right, there was actually a solar eclipse that happened on June 10th, the day before. So that's kind of intriguing in and of itself. Okay, keep that in your mind. Now remember what day it was. It was June 11th. Okay, let's keep going here. Okay, this is the Torah calendar. Not sure why I had that open, but we'll come back to that in a second. Okay, well, what's interesting is there was a sign called the Star of Bethlehem sign that a lot of you are familiar with. That happened back in the same year. I'm not the same year, sorry. His thing was last year. But in 2015, June 30th of 2015. Now, remember, we're looking at the end of summer this year being June 30th, right, as the 1st of Tammuz. And it just so happened that the Star of Bethlehem sign was on June 30th, exactly 7 years ago. So could that have been a 7-year warning of the return of Christ. You kind of got his birth 7 years ago represented, and then his actual return is something to consider. What's also interesting is, let's keep going here. Well, here's some more pictures of that Star of Bethlehem, if you want to see that. So it was when Jupiter and Venus combined there, and we're seen in the sun, in the sky, a 2,000-year-old sign. It says for the first time in 2,000 years, it's visible. So they're saying since the first time since Christ. Okay, so that's pretty significant. Okay, that was just 7 years ago. Okay, now on that same year, now stick with me here because this is kind of interesting. And that same year, there was a full solar eclipse on March 20th of 2015. Okay. Now, what's interesting is you go from that day, that March 20th, 2015, and you go 2520 prophetic days forward, and you land on February 11th. Now, I think by now we're all probably, if you've listened to this channel before, you're probably all familiar with February 11th. Okay, February 11th, I did a video on that, the fig tree generation, and the fig tree generation ended on February 11th. Well, according to the Enoch calendar, the days of Noah, because the Enoch calendar was used in the days of Noah, most believe, that's a 364-day calendar every 7 days because God made the world in 7 days. So according to that calendar, February 11th was the end of the fig tree generation. Well, what's also interesting is Russia invaded on February 11th of the Julian calendar, which actually was June 24th. I'm sorry, February 24th. Forgive me. February 24th. Now, remember we talked about, what was this? Is this one, sir? Oh no, that's talking about the, okay, no, that was the woman at the well. Okay, let me keep going. Okay, so well, on June 24th, we all know what's happening, right? The planets are aligning. Okay, the planets are aligning on June 24th. So that's very significant. Well, what's interesting about that, and maybe that's why where I got off, because I used this. Let me see. So if you look, I did another video called 4 months more and then the harvest. Well, Jesus says, oh yeah, it was John 4. So that's why I was in John 4. It says, don't you have a saying, it's still 4 months until the harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. So isn't it interesting that this February 11th sign and February 24th just happen to line up with the June 24th of these planets? It's 4 months more. So 4 months more of this harvest time, you could argue, from the time that they invaded. It's exactly 4 months to the day. March, April, May, June. So that's 4 months, right? So 4 months more. And that's just 2 days from now, okay? That all these planets are going to align. And they're going to align for the entire week, basically, until June 30th. And on June 30th, that's when we've got the first day of Tammuz occurring. So we've got that happening the whole week. Let me see what this is. Got all this stuff open. I don't even know what I have here. Oh, okay, right. What's also interesting about June 24th is it's exactly 40 days from May 15th, which was the blood moon. Okay, the blood moon happened on May 15th, right? And that also could have been the actual Passover dates. We believe or propose could possibly be, and it's exactly 40 days from them. We land on June 24th when all the planets align. Okay, and I was looking at scriptures about this, and you know what's interesting is the Bible never uses the word planets. Okay, it only talks about stars. So a lot of times we can kind of understand that perhaps even when they're talking about stars, they really mean or perhaps include planets as well. And I thought this was an interesting scripture here. It says, when God is talking to Job, he says, "Where were you when I laid earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footing set, or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy." And I thought, man, isn't that interesting? Because the first thing I thought about was Christ is the morning star. That also calls Lucifer the morning star, and that's kind of interesting, like a changing of the guard, because you've got the real Christ and you've got the Antichrist, the fake Christ, right? So you've got Jesus as the real morning star, and then Lucifer as the counterfeit morning star as well. And in fact, I could show you that real quick. Morning star. Let's see how many times morning star says, "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You've been cast out of the earth, you who once laid low the nations." So this is talking about Satan here in Isaiah 14, right? And he says, and then Jesus also says at the end, he says, "I am the root, the offspring, and the bright morning star." Okay? So you've got the real morning star, you got the counterfeit morning star, right? And when you look here, going back to these planets aligning, the best time to see them, see if I can find one that shows you, is going to be in the morning. Actually, this one looks pretty good. 45 minutes before sunrise. I believe that's what it says. Oh, man, it's so tiny. If you guys can see that, I don't know how well that shows up for you. But it says on dawn, June 24, 45 minutes before sunrise. So as we know, Jesus talks about coming back. We don't know if he's going to come at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or at dawn, or in the morning, right? There's like 4 different times he gives that he might come. And here we've got 45 minutes before sunrise, and that's when the morning stars, so to speak, are lining up. And we do see a plural there of morning stars as well. It says, "Until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts, I will also give you the morning star." Oh, no, wait. No, maybe it's not a plural. Sorry. "I also give that one the morning star, and the morning star rises in your hearts." So maybe it's a time to figure out which one's the real morning star. Who is the real morning star and who isn't? But it's kind of interesting that it's 45 minutes before dawn. And some say that as the sun rises, then slowly one will disappear. You know, they will start to disappear. And maybe it's like we're disappearing with the real morning star while the counterfeit morning star remains. Kind of an interesting thought there. Let me see. You guys had some interesting thoughts too. I wanted to share some of your thoughts here. Leslie pointed out that 6/11 on the Julian calendar is also connects with 2/11 on the fig tree in the Enoch calendar, and that's that 4 months again. He says, and that's the day Russia invaded Julian calendar. We know about that. But he mentioned an interesting thought was Shia LaBeouf. I don't know if you know Shia LaBeouf. He was born on 6/11, and the movie Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. That's kind of interesting because we're going into a time like Revenge of the Fallen because the fallen angels are coming down and they're going to take revenge on the earth. And he says that was released on 6/24. So we know that the powers that be like to play with dates and they do all these things. There's other channels that's all they talk about is how these dates connect to everything. They love this. So here's this guy. He's born on that day, and then his movie's released on 6/11, which is kind of a 9/11 upside down, you could argue. But there's a 6/11, and then his movie comes out on 6/24, and those both tied into what we just said, the February 11th and the February 24th. And then it's Revenge of the Fallen. And he was making the point that, if you remember that actor Shia went through a time of depression where he was like confessing his sins to everybody and having people apologizing to people through a paper bag on his head and stuff. So it was some kind of ritual. So that Leslie brought up that point. John was sharing. He says, "I think the rare planetary alignment since June 17th is worth mentioning. Even more spectacular, according to space.com. Let's see. It's about to join the celestial salute. Tomorrow, the 22nd, the moon will come to within 5 degrees. So today the moon comes within 5 degrees to the west or right of Mars. Then from June 23rd to 25th, the waning crescent moon will occupy the broad space between Mars and Venus. And we could then imagine it serving as a proxy for our home planet, a sort of ersatz Earth, to help complete the planetary sequence." Yeah, this is amazing, guys. I mean, all these planets aligning. I mean, this is like never happened. Well, I shouldn't say it's never happened, but this is not something that happens very often. I'll just say that. I don't remember exactly the last time it happened, but for all these planets to be aligning like this is like amazing and miraculous in and of itself. And the tie-ins, 40 days, God uses 40 days as a very symbolic time. Obviously 40 days of the flood, 40 days in the desert. There's lots of 40-day tie-ins there that it's actually 40 days from the blood moon that we just experienced as well. Cherie says, "I don't expect you to answer all my questions." Oh yeah, let me skip to her question here. God Guys, I love all these questions. I love that you send me these questions, and I'm glad that we can answer them together. I can bring them on here, and we can all kind of talk about some of these ideas together with each other. And if you ever don't want me to share a question, just let me know. But I won't share personal things about you guys. But if it's just kind of a general question about things that are going on, I figure we can all benefit from those questions. So don't worry, I respect that. I do a lot of personal counseling and coaching, and I respect that very much. So each month is supposed to start at the new crescent moon. So she's talking about the fact that moon cycle, right, that we basically don't know when Sabbath really is, right? Because we're going by this Gregorian calendar, so we think it's Saturday, but obviously it's not Saturday. It's when the moon cycle is. So that's when we have to figure out when the actual Sabbaths take place. And there's always kind of this lag time in between new moons, so that's why they never know when the new moon's going to appear. So that's a good point, So we really don't know what day it is, to be plain. We think it's June 24th, or we think it's this day or that day on the Jewish calendar, but the reality is we don't have the exact right dates, because we're supposed to be following the moon. We're supposed to be living by faith. The whole principle of living by faith is waiting for that new moon to appear, and then we're going to start it's like the manna in the morning. Don't save up the manna, go out every day and get new manna, right? And so she's saying then there's different times between us and Israel, like seasons, and if the fig tree is supposed to be like a landmark sign to be watching for summer to be near. Yeah, we just kind of talked about that a little bit. What is about summer we're supposed to be looking for? Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. Like, what is it about summer that's so important? Because God's talking about the fig tree. It's like, when you see the fig tree, summer is near. Like, oh, okay, I guess the fig tree is not as special as summer being near. I guess that's what's really important. So kind of makes you think, is Jesus saying, that's when I come in the summer, which kind of makes sense. Like, would Jesus come in the winter time? That's kind of a time of death. And summer's a time of full life. The middle of summer is kind of like the fullness of life. So that just kind of makes sense that Jesus would come at a time that's full of life. That's the living time, and that he would bring his destruction in the winter. When Mr. B, who is occupying the office right now, says we're going to go through a dark winter. It's like, yeah, exactly. That's what the wrath is. That's what the tribulation is. That's a dark winter. So it makes sense that would begin in winter, but that Jesus would take us in spring or summer. That just kind of seems to go along with the whole spirit of it. And also with Song of Solomon, it talks about that as well. So great point there. Let's see what else. You had a few more thoughts here. Our summer started on the 21st of June, goes till about September 22nd, but Israel's doesn't start till June 30th. And July 1st, and looks like it could go all the way to end of October and the beginning of November, which is kind of crazy because there's a next blood moon then, which is also a good point. Yeah, there's a blood moon on November 8th, I believe it is, and there's the harvest, our harvest, or Israel's harvest. Yeah, so some good points there, guys. And check this out. Look at this. New Zealand just had this happen. Check that out. This is what was in the New Zealand sky like 2 days ago, it says. This wild spiral spinning in the sky. It says spirals of blue light in New Zealand sky leave stargazers. Whoops, I hit the wrong thing there. Leave stargazers kind of freaking out. Well, yeah, I would think so, especially if you don't know God and you're just thinking the world is some cesspool of slime that came out of dust or on the back of crystals or something like that, and then suddenly dinosaurs appeared. Then I could see you really freaking out. But people like us, we freak out in a different way. We're like, yes, we Jesus freak out. We're like, yeah, baby, what is going on here? What is God doing? Is this him kind of preparing to roll back the scroll on the sky? So that's kind of an interesting thought on that one.